name is Elise Castle and I'm one of the platform engineers here at CTDS. Today I'm going to walk through how to install a Gen3 instance on your local laptop. I'll be using Minikube on my local MacBook for this tutorial, so please feel free to follow along. Before you do so, please make sure you visited our docs.gen3.org site and take a look at the prerequisites before doing the steps that are defined in this tutorial. Alright, to kick things off, I'm actually going to start out in Docker Desktop. This is my preferred way of running containers. And before I do anything, I like to go up to Settings and click on Resources. And here I like to make sure that I'm using max amount of CPU and memory, just because we're running a lot of microservices, so we like to have as many resources as possible. Alright, so from there, we're going to start by installing Minikube. So I'm going to go over to my terminal, and here you can just run brew install Minikube. I've already run this, so I'm just going to Control-C out of it. And for our next step, we're going to start the Minikube cluster with the Minikube start command. Here you can see I provided a flag for memory and for CPU. That's why the last step is so important, is we cannot exceed the memory or CPUs that was defined in Docker Desktop. So make sure that you've done that setting before moving on to the Minikube start command. Again, I'm going to Control-C out of this because my cluster is already running for the sake of time. Alright, and here you can see if I do a kubectl get nodes, that Minikube node has popped up. So it acts like its own cluster, a one node cluster. Alright, so the next step for Minikube is to enable the ingress resource. So you just want to run Minikube add-ons enable ingress. So this will deploy the ingress controller, which is Kubernetes specialized load balancer. And we need this for future steps when we install our Helm chart. But for now, I am going to just Control-C out of that as well because I've already run it. But I can show you, if I do a kubectl get pods in the ingress nginx namespace, those pods will pop up. You can see these are two jobs that ran and the pod is running. If this wasn't running for some reason, the best way to troubleshoot is just to look at the logs. You can do that and make sure to supply the namespace flag. And that would print out, hopefully, an error that would help you diagnose the issue. But since it's running, we can move to the next steps. To walk through the anatomy of our Gen3 Helm charts, we can look at this repo. And we can go into the Helm directory here. In this directory, you can see a list of a bunch of different charts here, these each representing one of our different services. And if we scroll down, you can see the Gen3 Helm chart will be the most important one because this will turn off or on any of the other services. So it is considered our umbrella chart. So if we click into Gen3 and we look at the values file, we can see a global section that we'll dive into a little bit later. But if we scroll down, you can see where all of the services are enabled or disabled. When we install this chart, we're going to be supplying our own values.yaml file, so whatever is defined in that file will just overwrite whatever is default in our Helm repository. So if we wanted Ambassador enabled, we don't need to supply that because that's already enabled true, but if we wanted to turn it off, we would just set enabled to false. Also, please note that if you wanted to configure some different things for Ambassador and you're using the Gen3 Helm chart to deploy Ambassador, to see a full list of configurable options, go back out to the Helm directory and you can click on Ambassador and click on the values.yaml file here. And this will show you a full list of options that are configurable for our Ambassador service. But that's a little bit more than we're doing today. So we'll just focus on deploying this Gen3 Helm chart. So to start out with, we're going to scroll down and we're going to run these two Helm repo commands. This will add the Gen3 repository to our local laptop. Alright, now that that's completed, we can go about actually running our Helm upgrade install command. To walk through this command, the first Gen3 is referencing the Helm installation name, which we're calling Gen3, but this could be anything. Then this Gen3 is referencing the repo name we added here, which we're calling Gen3 as well. And this last Gen3 is in reference to the umbrella chart that I showed you in this Helm directory. So we're actually installing that Gen3 Helm chart. All right, so I'm just going to copy this command. Before I actually run it, I'm going to use a different values.yaml file. You can see what I'm going to use for this tutorial here. So to walk through a couple of these values here, I have adjusted the host name just to be elise.dev.planx.net and to override the default host name. I've set dev equal to true so that we can have Postgres and Elasticsearch running locally. For Portal, I have set specific resources, but more importantly, I have set this image tag. We're using the repository data portal prebuilt with tag dev. This is helpful for local deployments just because it takes less resources to get Portal up and running, and it's quicker to start up. Our Portal image uses MPX to build, and that can take a little bit of time. So just for local testing, I like to use tag dev. But again, I would not recommend using this for a production deployment, as this does not allow you to set the data dictionary, and we'll need that data dictionary for specific data that you'll be uploading depending on the schema of your data. But for now, we're just going to go forward using this. For fence, we're going to set mock auth equal to true. This will allow us to access our commons without having to log in. Again, don't use this in production as this will allow people to bypass authentication. All right, so I'm just going to run that command and supply it with the actual path of my values file. All right, so that's now deployed. And you can see revision 9, I've already had Gen 3 running on my laptop. But if I didn't, that would just say revision 1. And here, everything's already running. When you first run this command, it will take a little bit of time for everything to come up healthy, just because of all of the DB create jobs. So if things look like they're not running, just go get a cup of coffee and come back and everything should be running for you. All right, so now the next step we have to do in order to access this on our laptop is to add elise.dev.planx.net to our Etsy host file and map that to localhost. So we can do that just by running this command. And now that we have that added to our local host file, we can actually see the ingress resource here that's created, and it's using hosts elise.dev. So if we try to go to that site now, first off, you'll see we get an error about it not being secure, but second off, you can see this 404 not found. And that's because with Minikube, we have to run an extra command in order for this commons to be up. So to do that, I'm just going to run Minikube tunnel. And when I reload this, my commons will load. Just give it a second to come up here. Awesome, and you can see it auto-logged me in as test here. So yeah, that's kind of the starters for deploying Minikube and Gen 3 on your local laptop. In my next video, I'll be covering how to, get a cert generated for this, how to submit data to your Gen 3 commons, how to run an ETL job in order to populate this Explorer tab, and how to configure workspaces